Ayacko, the Jubilee National Management Committee, alongside the parliamentary leadership, had a meeting yesterday. Of course, not much was revealed, but just based on speculation ahead of the Jubilee's National Delegates Conference, there are two things that is expected to take center course. The first one is the possible revocation of the DP as the deputy party leader, together with the ouster of those allied to the UDA party, as well as seeking for a ratification to enter into a coalition with the ODM party. Now, you're from ODM, and we are barely 10 months from next year's general election. Critics have argued that this isn't necessarily a good move, because what they're seeing from Jubilee are basically kicks of a dying horse.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Those are some observations, but that is not going to dissuade ODM, which is the party of reform, and which is the party that sees the future, from soldiering on. Now, allow me to get back, or to look back into what my brother Ndindi Nyoro had raised. And he had raised the track record of his so-called candidate. Some of us have been around, we've done politics a long time, and we have experienced how it grows. Let's take the Ministry of Agriculture during the tenure of the Deputy President. That's when all the sugar mills collapsed, including Sony, because of the runaway importation of sugar. Let's take that tenure when he was the Ministry of Agriculture. That's when the maize in Rift Valley, or maize farming, collapsed. So he is responsible for the collapse of maize in Rift Valley, for the collapse of sugar growing and milling in the entire Western Kenya. But because he has what is called a mega microphone, he will paint a donkey to look like a horse or a zebra and call it a zebra. That's what is going on, and my brother Ndindi Nyoro is very articulate about that, so he will try to persuade us that it never happened. Okay. That is one. We are still on track record.
Yes.
The biggest achievement that was made in education sector, the first achievement was made by the late second president, Daniel Arap Moi, when he expanded education and availed access to Harambee schools, using just fundraising and allowing district education boards to license and register schools. So every village started having a school. But Kibaki, President Kibaki, brought free education. Okay. I want to leave it there. If you look at the track record of Raila Amolo Odinga, every inch of reform in this country, he has either bled in order to have it come on board, he has sweated in order to have it on board, he has sacrificed. He is the epitome of sacrifice when it comes to reform, because reform is painful. The other guy who has been piggybacking on the sweats of Kenya now calls himself a reformist. So Raila has sacrificed. Number two, you will look at Raila as the Minister for Roads during his tenure under President Kibaki. All the designs of all the roads you see today, the cost of construction of road per kilometer was affordable. Right now, it is runaway. Now, thirdly, when we look at Jubilee administration, and when we listen to Ndindi Nyoro reckon that Jubilee was doing pretty well until the handshake, that is hogwash. Jubilee did the railways, but at what cost? And who became richer? Your guess is as good as mine. Not Uhuru Kenyatta. Who became richer? You can guess it. Jubilee did rural electrification and connectivity. Why is Kenya Power not having money? You know where the money is. Your guess is as good as mine. It never landed in Raila. So all this mess, after sacking all the successful corporations and departments, then you now want to tell Kenyans that you are as white as snow, when you cannot explain how much you earn or you own. Now let me come back to the party politics.
Yes, party politics.
Because that is the topic that you have raised. Coalitions are a recognition that diversity of ideas, diversity of regions, and diversity of personalities must be taken on board when it comes to management of national resources. You cannot purport to go alone and without partnering with many people so that diverse views are brought on board. What the deputy president is doing in his UDA party before he saw the light and started allowing small parties to come on board was to be an elephant and try to partner with small animals like goats and sheep who you would manipulate by virtue of your size. Because he'll take my very good friend Ndindi Nyoro, who is so young and is so new, and other people, and he says that those are his partners. That cannot be the case. An elephant cannot partner with a small person like Ndindi Nyoro. The elephant will eat everything and Ndindi will starve to death. So he needs to partner and have the courage to look at Raila in the eye, look at Kalonzo in the eye, look at Mudavadi in the eye and say, can we work together? Why is he looking for people he'll manipulate?
All right. Well, Farah, again, on the timelines, on this possible revocation of the deputy president as the deputy party leader of Jubilee, as well as his allies who have moved with him to the UDA faction. Looking at the amount of time left up until we get into the elections, where does this put Jubilee in terms of the dynamics coming 2022?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
If they try to get rid of him, shed him, one, they cannot be sure that they will garner the requisite constitutional majority, and two, it's not going to be an easy thing. If he leaves them, they leave him alone. He's there. He's already got his mission cut for himself.
Okay.
He says, "I'm a man on a mission," and he wants to blame everybody else for the state of affairs in the country right now, particularly the economy, except himself. And he seems to be picking quite a bit because he's not been there now for the last, for a while. I mean, since immediately they had a second term, I think they started the process of sidelining him. So he's, for him, he has nothing. I mean, when he says that there's no surrender, there is no retreat, I can only go forward. He's in a straitjacket. There's nothing else he can do.
All right.
The sad situation is that every time the deputy or the constitutional assistant to a president was at loggerheads with the president in the second term, the deputy lost. You know, there was Atiku of Nigeria, who was the vice president to Olusegun Obasanjo.
Yes.
And they had issues, and Olusegun settled on somebody else. He ran, and he lost, because the state machinery was against him. When you have the incumbent fighting you, it's not easy.
So this is the same foreseeable state you see for the deputy president, now that they are loggerheads with the head of state?
Yes, yes, yes. You see what Ndindi and the rest of them are not saying right now?
Yes.
Is that Ndindi is, you know, as children, sometimes when we have a problem with our own age mates, and you have a beating, then they will go and beat the smaller ones also somewhere else. So it's not Mudavadi who shouted very loud that this country cannot be left to the hands of a thief.
Okay.
It's not what you call Raila, who spent an undue amount of time calling Ruto a thief. It's the president who said that I can't trust this country and the future of this country with thieves.
But he hasn't necessarily pinpointed
and the
to be the deputy president.
And the president's inner circle were very categorical on who is a thief.
But it's just an assumption. He hasn't necessarily specifically pointed it out.
I mean, you've seen, you know, let me tell you one thing. I mean, it's not an assumption. As said, by elimination, of course, you say, I can't leave. When you say I can't leave, it means there is a structure in place. It's my time to go. But that structure has somebody else who's coming after me who is, you know, there in the system. Okay. So I can't leave the country in the hands of this guy. It means my deputy, who is going to take over from what I'm doing right now, of course, through a constitutional process, is a thief. I cannot leave him in charge of things here. So when you keep on talking about everybody else, except the president, and because the duel is between the president and his deputy for information. Everybody else is falling in line one way or the other because of what you call happenstance or chance.
Okay.
You have an opportunity to benefit from. Right. You see what I mean?
Yes.
What you say is that vita vya panzi ni furaha ya kunguru. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the two who are there together are going to fight one another, and the ones who are out there will see an opportunity, so they will encourage it.
All right.
And you can't fault Raila
yes.
for encouraging that. You can't fault also Oka people for encouraging that.
Okay,
it's a natural process. But the real issue is a problem between the deputy president and his boss.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
And the boss feels like, he feels that he has been rubbed the wrong way, because he wanted this man to stay loyal and stay behind, lockstep with him, and maybe towards the end, maybe now you have a year to go for campaigning, because campaigning, a country cannot come out of a campaign and start another campaign for 5 years.
Fair enough, Farah. I very well get you. I want to give Honorable Ndindi Nyoro an opportunity to respond to all this, but we'll do that just after we take this break. I'll get back with you, Mweshibiwa. Let's take another break right here on Punchline, but do stay with us in this steamy conversation. Honorable Ndindi Nyoro wants to give you an opportunity to just respond to that. But as you respond to this, let me read a remark by Kenny Member of Parliament so that you tie it up with that response. He said, expect big names to be dropped from the membership of the list of Jubilee. We will start with the deputy president. If you lose your membership, you also lose your position in the party. That is bound to happen, and there is no doubt about it. Now, Honorable Ndindi, ideally, one would expect that if you're expelled from a party, you would lose your seat. But our constitution doesn't necessarily define how or what it means by resignation for one to lose his or her seat. So what we are saying right here, are these loopholes the reasons as to why leaders who are allied to the UDA chose to propagate ideals of another party instead of being loyal to Jubilee, knowing very well that there's nothing much that can happen to them?
I think broadly, without necessarily being very legalistic, was an issue of the ideology. The ideology on which Jubilee was formed in 2017 deviated from the course. And of course, it was swallowed by the handshake people. And by the way, I need to make a disclaimer. There is some reference that was made by the former minister, Ochilo. Yeah. When I mean the president's brother, I don't mean his family. Okay. I mean his handshake brother. So in my reference going forward, I mean you should know I'm referring
all right, thank you for that
to your party leader. Yeah. So ideology is the one that changed. The party that had big plans about Kenya, Big Four and etc., it deviated, it went to constitutional change and all the other failed projects. Number two, on the MP for Kenny, the comment about Jubilee chasing people.
Yes.
It is laughable, to say the least. You are chasing people from which party? Jubilee is a former party. It is a party that do not exist. In fact, they should come up with a more robust plan. Most of us, we are in UDA, and we are there for sure. Our hearts, our supporters, and our base is in UDA. Those are the characters like Madenge, that Kenny MP, is in ODM. The likes of Akina Sakaja and others are in ANC. There is no single person currently who actually, any elected leader who actually belongs to Jubilee. It doesn't exist. So the best way to do is to disband, because people have already found new homes. They should settle in their ODM. We settle in our UDA. The others settle in the other parties that they have moved to. We disband the party. You know, it's laughable. From day one, when we were elected, it has been a party of blackmail, intimidation, chasing people away. Until now, the chaser is being chased. The other day, we saw the person who actually chased us, that is Tuju,
yes,
now lamenting that he's also being chased. And I want to tell you this for sure. The last person to leave Jubilee will actually have no one to chase. We will close the door, aweke fuguo pale juu ya mulango, because there will be no one to leave that key to. That party belongs to the past. We do not recognize it. But they can chase whoever they want to chase, but we are not perturbed. Number two, I want to respond, and I hope you give me time proportionately, because you called two people who are more or less speaking the same language, and myself. because there are some issues
Yes.
that I need to respond to.
Okay.
We cannot come here, Mheshimiwa Ochilo, when you come to such a show and you want to use facts, make sure they are correct. You gave the analogy about the deputy president having been in higher education, and you blabbered around his legacy. Let me tell you the fact that there is. When he was higher education minister, this is the person who actually eliminated something that was called bed capacity. University admission used to be based on beds, like it's beds that go to class. That the university, and especially the public universities, would only admit students based on their bed capacity. He came and opened up that. Number two, he condensed the time, and I said there before, like in our time, you could wait for 2 years to join university. Currently, you finish this year, the same year you go to the university. Let me now go to the issue of agriculture ministry, because maybe Mheshimiwa Ochilo Ayacko could have not perused his facts correctly. If you check the government data itself, during the time when, around 2008 coming all the way, when he was the Minister for Agriculture, actually that is the time that Kenya recorded the highest yield in terms of maize. That is when we had the lowest or the least importation of food in the country. Yeah. Because through his interventions, like in terms of fertilizer and other inputs, we were able to have bounty harvests in Kenya based on deliberate efforts and deliberate policies that he made as agriculture minister. If you remember, there is actually a time that he was commended by the president himself, President Kibaki, as being the most hardworking minister. Even by the time actually he was agriculture minister, you remember there were some awards that were being given by government through the minister for, I think, public, the one that is headed by Kobia currently. Yeah. He was actually awarded as the best minister, but more importantly, he gave facts around sugar. And I thought he came from, or he comes from a sugar belt. Yes. Mheshimiwa Ochilo Ayacko ought to have known that in year 2008-2009 financial year, actually that is the highest profitability that Mumia Sugar got. It had 1.6 billion net profit in that time when William Ruto was agriculture minister. So we need to operate in the confines of facts. Going to the issue of corruption. He talked about corruption.
Yeah.
This is an issue we'll need a whole day to discuss. We need to discuss this matter very, very precisely. Yeah. And I'll not even go historical. I'll use this particular Jubilee administration. And I'll use several parameters which may be used to gauge the amount of corruption that we have seen in our country. Let me use something like debt, because most of the money that has been borrowed, including the railway money, has been pocketed by our leaders. Across the globe, the average cost of building a railway shows that our railway was inflated by a whopping 100 billion. That money must have gone to a certain leader in this country.
All this under the government that brought you into power, right?
All this under the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta.
But
let me even bring you closer home.
Yeah.
The other day, we saw blatant corruption. They have now stolen from people, from the Kenyan coffers. They actually even stole from our health sector, that is KEMSA. The president himself came on national TV and said within 21 days, those guys must be prosecuted. Yes. When the president was given the file, and he saw the names that were in that file, and he saw some that were very close to this administration, okay, hiyo file ikawekwa chini ya drawer. We have never had anything around KEMSA ever since.
Yes. Let me give Senator Ayacko an opportunity to respond to this. And as you respond to that, I mean, he's talking about the government in which he serves in, and he is a legislator to start with. How do you see it?
You know, interestingly, you had intended that this topic be about political parties. You notice how he twists the issue and dwells on his facts that are alternative facts. These are the real facts. Because I come from sugar growing area. These are the big facts. If you look at the success of Mumias, the success of Mumias was not in 2007, 2008. In 2001, when Mini and I brought the Sugar Act, 2001.
Senator, allow me to cut you short. I've been told there was an issue, they might, but just go on. It's okay now.
Yeah.
Go,
2001, Mumias was being managed by Buka. And if you look at the performance and expansion of Mumias at that particular time, that's when Mumias was most stable under Kipruto Arap Kirwa 2003, 2004. After Kirwa served his tenure and somebody else came on board, that is when everything went south. If you look at maize and the maize farmers, there was a committee of Senate that went there, and you looked at what the farmers were talking about and what the person they were suspecting to have brought it down. Who were they talking about? It's obvious. Just get that clip. They were talking about the deputy president. It wasn't me. We might sit here on a national platform and regurgitate facts and twist them, but the farmers of Rift Valley know that the deputy president currently is asking them to grow, what is it, avocado or mangoes or something, or fish.
Okay.
So in his tenure is when these things went down. So really, when we talk about issues of Jubilee as a corrupt entity, my friend Ndindi Nyoro had cited the building of the railways. When something disappears, where I come from my language, if a chicken disappears or a chick disappears from the compound, you just have to check from the dogs. The one that is having feathers all over it, or the one that is fat, it probably ate it. Who is the fattest? Who has been wealthiest in Jubilee administration? Now we know them, particularly among people who are running for office. Okay. Of course, there are many other people who have been stealing, but people who have been in government now, who have grown, richer by leaps and bounds. We know them. We know the one who has bought several choppers, has bought several farms, and is busy buying everybody, including Parliament.
Yeah.
Parliament is bought by a particular individual. Or parties have been bought by particular individuals. They are running elections, running campaigns of billions and billions, purporting that they are running it for Wanjiku. No, Wanjiku does not need that kind of money. Wanjiku does not even need droplets. Wanjiku just needs good policies and being taken care of. So let me leave that aside. Let us come back to the issues of parties, because that's what we are talking about, and coalitions. And I think my brother, the former speaker, deputy speaker, spoke to that subject very well. When you look at political parties as they are now, and the party discipline that is being encouraged, party in discipline that is being encouraged by UDA, I can assure you the output of Parliament will plummet. Parliamentary organization, Parliament as institution, must always operate around party discipline, its leadership, its policies, and how members gravitate towards approving or disapproving issues. But you cannot get sponsored by your party, go out there to the public, persuade the public to buy the policies of that party, and after the public have done it, then you sit back, and because of some 2022 imaginary prospects that you will be in office, you shoot the party dead and blame some other people who don't belong to that party. Okay. Jubilee is dysfunctional courtesy of rebels that are calling themselves UDA, Tanga, or anything. All right. I think they should have had the patience, temerity, to sit it through and then decamp when election time comes. The people who put Jubilee in office, who made it popular, have been given a raw deal by an indisciplined clique of people who are in a hurry to kick out President Uhuru out of office, and in the process, some service that we expected is not being done or rendered to us. Then they want to blame people who are not given the mandate, as Raila Odinga. Right. Who mandated Raila Odinga to appoint ministers or to arrest people? Yes. Lastly, this issue of corruption that we are talking about, any time an individual is under investigation, any time an individual is arrested, Who is the person giving them comfort? Who is the person who is defying and threatening the investigative agencies that he will deal with them when he gets to office? I think birds of a feather stick together. Okay. And we know that the person who is protecting the corrupt, who is protecting the suspects, let me not call them corrupt, I really don't know, I'm not having those facts, but when a process to find them guilty or to acquit them is put in place, the person undermining that process and its legitimacy is the deputy president. How is he in future going to run a government?
Fair
he
enough.
will allow corruption to be prosecuted politically, or people to be sanitized politically.
All right.
So that's crazy. We can't allow that.
Let's take our final break right here on Punchline. When we get back, we switch gears a bit away from party politics. We talk matters corruption and two other key boiling issues that have been coming up. So do stay with us. I'll be back in a short while. Issue, and I want to begin with you, Farah. We have this boiling issue surrounding the concerns that have been raised by UDA pertaining to CSs actively engaging in party politics, and they've actually written to the IBC to bar CS Matiang'i and Joe Musheru from doing this, or else they need to step down and actively engage in politics. Looking at the dockets, those two personalities are handling, that is security as well as IT, which is very key next year's election. Is there a valid concern from the UDA team for these two personalities to get away from that?
There is indeed a valid concern, but the fact that you have a valid concern over how the state is going to be run is neither here nor there in statecraft. There has to be somebody there. You can't have a situation in which there is no minister for internal security, there is no minister for ITC or IT. And so there is no, and every minister, regardless of whether the ministers come from inside parliament, like the parliamentary system we had before, or they come from outside the parliament in a purely presidential system, like they do it in the States. The thing that should worry UDA is if they're going to break the law. And when they break the law, of course, they can raise that issue and hope that the Director of Public Prosecutions would be in a position to see this, or the Attorney General, for that matter, who is the advisor, the legal advisor to the government of the day, also is pretty much biased. So it's you have to look for another way around to try and have this addressed, but you cannot say that they can't be there. They have to be there. And you're not the appointing authority. The appointing authority is the president of the day, and basically the executive is the president. So you basically what you call sparring with the wind. I mean, there's nothing you can achieve through that. I have no problem with the concerns that are there. The concerns will be there always. They are there in the most developed countries. That people from the government who run certain institutions of the government are pretty much partisan or partial in one way or the other. But what can you do about it? They are part of that government. You only have to make sure that they do not break the law. If they break the law, then of course you have recourse to a number of avenues. Either you seek the intervention of the Director of Public Prosecution, who is supposed to be, for all intents and purposes, an independent person with the tenure of, with the security of tenure, who cannot be sacked by the president, but of course has a certain role in the appointment. And if that doesn't work very well, then you can go for private prosecution.
Well, Honorable Ndindi, other leaders have come out to defend the CS, saying there was no point that he actually mentioned is affiliated to anybody who's running the election. And he also released a statement and said very well that he's not stepping down. That is something that you guys should not expect. But then again, the leaders who've come out to defend the CS have stated very clearly that there was some time back in 2017 when the other CSs were actually doing the same for other leaders. ODM did not speak out. So they're trying to ask, why now? Why the double standards from the UDA faction?
There is no double standard. And by the way, we don't expect them to resign.
Yeah.
Because currently the administration is presiding over a government full of impunity. and therefore these cabinet secretaries, the reason why they rule with their with the kind of impunity they exhibit is because they know that's the kind of administration that they did. So we voice these issues and concerns, not for them to resign, because we know they will not. We voice them for them to know that we see, and Kenyans are seeing. There is no way, as the cabinet minister in charge of security, in charge of all the police in Kenya, because you know they've already collapsed even the commissions, that actually ought to be at the pinnacle of the police force. There is no way that kind of a minister goes out there on a weekend and pledges allegiance to the former prime minister or ODM leader, then purports the second day to meet the IEBC in terms of preparedness for the next general election. Ochilo, that other CS, who I hear is a minister for youth and actually does nothing around the youth. We only see him over the weekend bastardizing his boss, the deputy president, is in charge of the ICT. And we believe they should be probably giving technical advice to the IEBC. You cannot over the weekend come out against one presidential candidate, then you are the same person meeting IEBC in terms of the technical know-how and advice in terms of the IT. CS Wamarwa is currently in charge of defense. I mean, these are just issues around decorum and leadership. But I want also to respond to the myriad of lies that we have been treated here by my colleagues. And especially today, I think Ochilo, the Senator Ochilo Ayacko is on a higher gear of lies and propaganda. I have come with here before, and I think today he's on a top gear of propaganda and lies. Because, again, he delved in the issue of corruption, which I again say is an issue that needs more time. Okay. He delved on the issue of legacy around the deputy president, Mheshimiwa Ochilo Ayacko. You can argue with words, but unfortunately, you cannot argue with figures that are documented. Mumia Sugar recorded a profit after tax of 1.6 billion Kenya shillings in 2008-2009 financial year. The person who was in charge of agriculture then is the Deputy President William Ruto. Then he talked about the former Prime Minister having been part and parcel of the Kibaki administration. We for sure know what all that meant. The entire second term of President Kibaki, we know what he went through, courtesy of the former Prime Minister. And again, Kenyans know these things. We don't need even to keep on repeating them. Yeah. They may become banal because Kenyans know all these things. I want to be more specific on the issue and the failure of this handshake administration. And I'll use again facts. Yeah. And I said them before in another platform. But the beauty about facts and figures is that you cannot fight them because they are there glaring at you. And I keep repeating, there is no way and better way to measure the failure of this administration led by President Uhuru Kenyatta and his brother Raila Odinga than the issue of debt. That specific matter speaks around the entire economy.
Honorable Ndindi, Raila doesn't have an office in this government.
He doesn't have.
I'm trying to understand what you mean by the administration led by Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta.
And by the way, that is exactly the fact that I'm talking about. That you don't need to have any position in Kenya for you to be directing policy. You just need to have the blessing of the president. And that is what the former prime minister has.
So you're making an assumption that is directing the government permanent secretary.
To deviate me from the lead issue, and please look for another person to manipulate around those issues. I am going to give my facts. You are going to have your time, Ochilo.
But that's an assumption, just as
that's
you move
an
on.
assumption.
Yeah.
Let me use several parameters, and I'll start with debt. The debt we have taken in this country, and these leaders can bear me witness. We have even crossed the parameter and the ceiling that have been set by us in Parliament. Just for the record, the net debt borrowed by this regime entirely is around 8 trillion thereabout. In the first term, they actually borrowed only a net of 2.6, I'm talking about trillion, sorry, not billion. They only borrowed a net of around 2.6 trillion. Let me demonstrate what just half of that money should do for Kenyans to know that this government cannot be defended by any sane leader. The president talked about tarmacking 7,700 kilometers of road in Kirinyaga, in Kenya for the last 9 years. Tarmacking, even after exaggerations, and even after you provision eating by the other people around the chain, it costs around 60 million Kenya shillings per kilometer. So suppose even this regime never built 7,000, they built only actually double of that. So that means 15,000 kilometers of tarmac at 60 million per kilometer. That, by the way, we need to do this math for Kenyans to know. That comes to 900 billion. Actually call it 1 trillion because we know this government is corrupt. We provision 100 billion for them to eat as kickbacks. Let's go to water. Kenya has a population in terms of households of 12 million households in regards and according to the last census. If we were to connect each and every home with safe drinking water, and we provision actually 2 billion Kenya shillings per homestead in Kenya, that's just around 580 billion Kenya shillings. Let's go to electricity. Connecting electricity to a homestead costs around 35,000 Kenya shillings before the government gives a subsidy.
Yeah.
So let's even work with the gross. So 2 million Kenyans or homesteads had been connected prior to 2013. So let's talk about 10 million households in Kenya times 35. That's just around 350 billion Kenya shillings. Let's even talk about these TVETs. TVETs, let's assume we build 1 TVET per constituency worth just a whooping 1 billion.
All right.
Let me finish, please. Don't cut me short. You guys fear facts.
We need time.
You better not give me another chance, but you cannot cut me short on this. You are trying to run away from facts.
He has to be fair to us. That was not even the topic.
I would rather you just give me continuity, just 1 more minute to execute.
And then he allows us all the time.
Every constituency again.
No, but you build another. He's asking
I am saying I may not talk again, but let me
prosecute. Let's give him the
allow me also
please,
to talk about.
Let me prosecute.
Then give him 1 minute.
Yes,
and then allow us all the time.
Let's assume every constituency actually benefits with a level 5 hospital.
Yeah.
A level 6 hospital actually costs like 1 billion shillings, like the Odaya hospital. So every constituency, let's assume we have a 1 billion health facility, new, built by this regime. Okay. That's another 290 billion. You can think about any other thing, including education and including every other thing. So what am I trying to say? Yeah. This government, by only expending half of that money, every homestead in Kenya ought to have safe drinking water. Every homestead ought to have electricity. We ought to have tarmac 15,000 kilometers of road. Even the railway is included there, 350 billion even after eating. Okay. Provision even education at 1 billion per constituency every year. That money will not exceed 3.5 trillion. And therefore, those are glaring figures about the level of corruption and state capture that this regime has adjudicated. Right, that Senator, the money we have borrowed, we do not know where half of that money is. It has been eaten by our leaders.
Senator, as you respond to this, yes, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro has spoken about quite good figures from face value, as he stated right there. But what I'm trying to understand is Honorable Ndindi Nyoro is a legislator in this very same government. So I'm trying to understand where the disconnect is in terms of them ensuring that this is done and why it hasn't been done to date.
You know, basically what Ndindi Nyoro is doing here is a strategy to bastardize the current government. It's a strategy to lie about the current government so that it does not have political capital, and twist, spin those lies and try to disconnect the current administration from William Ruto. Let's be real. Since my return in politics, because I was in politics earlier, the only time I have seen in Parliament, and I've been there, most recently, is when we approved the debt ceiling. The money had already been spent. It was spent way back before even the current tenure. So basically what we were doing when we sat as a Senate and as National Assembly there for Parliament, we were ratifying a situation so that we would legalize and legitimize what had already been spent. If you look at this country's capacity to absorb money, to absorb money. The kind of figures that is bundling around are just intended to sensationalize this issue.
Okay.
That figure cannot be absorbed. Even if you are trying to build those things, it cannot be absorbed. So if you want to drill down on a debt, you can look at whether it was quasi-government institutions borrowing, whether it was what and what they were doing with it. Yeah. So all these things that are being, because debt can be discussed for days on end, and I do not want to get there. Yeah. What I want to say is that if we are to open each servant in the executive to declare how they earned their money, all of them, I am sure the deputy president would not have anything to say. He is the person who has constantly hidden behind the immunity and the constitutionality of his office so that he cannot be made to account for how he's making money, be made to account of how he's spending that money, be made to say anything that he's doing. So those are some of the opacity that must be dealt with. If you do not deal with that opacity, you will have many Ndindi Nyoros coming and wowing people with statistics that have no reference.
All right.
Because it's just, I'm not done, because he spoke for a long time.
Yes.
So I want to clearly state that what we need to do and why we haven't done this is that Parliament was derailed by a number of rebels. People who rebel against an administration put in office by the public, then they turn around and say that the failure of that administration is because of the generosity, the act of magnanimity by the leader of the opposition, Raila Odinga, to tell them, I'm ready to support you. A guy flees because he thinks 2020, you know, politics is not a joke. When Jubilee was put in place, those who put Jubilee in place and in power had hope, had desires. They were told there would be many stadiums. And who was telling them? Ruto. They were told that youth would get jobs in their millions every year. Who was telling them? Ruto. Now, because he has not done that, and he knows that Uhuru is going home, he is sitting somewhere and saying all those failures are Uhuru's and those failures are Raila's. Since when did Raila have instruments to create jobs? Since when did Raila have instruments to build stadiums? How can that be? Since when did he have instruments to borrow? So you see, this kind of circumlocutive talk on, you know, for endless time is designed for politics. You lie for a short time, you drop names and say they are responsible. Okay. When we come to Matiang'i, because that had a reason. When it comes to Matiang'i and you are asking him to resign, those circumstances are the ones that brought Deputy President to being deputy, using public officials to campaign and, you know, insulate him. So why, now that the shoe is on the other leg, he is saying that that is not permissible? We can't allow that kind of double speak. Now, when we look at the deputy president, also a public servant, he is using public police, he is using public offices, public residents, public tea, public servants to campaign. That is utilization of public resources. It is only Raila who is using his Railaism to campaign. He is not using any public thing. Right. So this kind of situation and double speak is not permissible.
Okay, Honorable Farah, you've heard what Senator Ayacko has mentioned there. He talked about the biggest issue being the derailment of Parliament with these leaders who are not necessarily disciplined to the party, and that is why they haven't necessarily been able to do anything for Kenyans.
Why have they not been able to do anything? Yeah. You can't have, how many are they? 290 members of Parliament?
They have the majority of Jubilee.
Well, look, it doesn't matter what
they are using it to undermine Jubilee.
Okay. Look, one has to understand the parliamentary system, the way it works. Yeah. Or even this executive right now, which we are using, in which committee heads are supposed to answer questions on the floor of the House. It's a trial and error kind of a thing that we started. And one of the big mistakes we made in when we were designing this constitution in 2010 was to allow ourselves to experiment on something that we've never seen before, getting government from outside. Members of Parliament will hold who accountable now? Who do they hold accountable? Because when you want to castigate the security machinery in the government or the Minister of Agriculture for whatever, and you want to bring a motion, who do you do? The person who is going to be responsible or who will answer you and or the question will legitimately be taken to the person is a member of parliament who is just a committee chair.
Okay.
What executive authority does that person have to correct things, to be accountable to you? You see what I mean? So we have a system that is not working, and all we're doing right now is to try and blame game. What can these members do? There's nothing those members of parliament, regardless of what their numbers are. The only thing they can go on is, you know, a witch hunt. Of course, today they can be hunting down so and so, tomorrow another person, the day after another person, and then we meet in a place like this. Ndindi comes and defends a man he has only met for a few years now, because we were there with him in parliament. Okay. And when we were in parliament with him, he was probably a very young man, still in secondary school. I like the gusto and the enthusiasm and the brilliance in which he portrays. But let's also understand one thing. Okay. I came into parliament in 1992 myself, at literally the same age that Ndindi came into this parliament. 35, I think I was that time. But you know who was there? The giants were there. Lawrence Sagini, Mwai Kibaki, Dennis Akumo. Everybody was there. So we took our time to understudy these people. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Everybody was there. So when you came up with, and of course both Uhuru and Ruto share this blame, just because they wanted to access office, they came with a digital whatever thing, where you don't have to learn anything. All you have to say is to throw all the bad epithets and insult the bigger age group, because, and you say, one thing I can be very sure of, the next president of this country is going to be less than 50. Less than 50 to bring what on board? You know what I mean? Yeah. And all we have done, as he puts it, rightly, in which they both try to defend, is we have a runaway debt. You see what I mean? Running into trillions. Right. And nobody is going to blame the other. They are responsible for it, fair and square, the two of them.
Fair enough. I know we can discuss corruption.
And I remember very well. You see, to try and separate this is like, you know, what you call Siamese twins, and you try and separate them and to make one of them survive. They rarely survive, by the way. Right. When you try and separate the Siamese twins, they both die. You know what I mean? Well, so for Uhuru to blame Ruto for all the wars in the country, the problems we have for Ruto to try and say, now I'm a clean man, all these things is because he was a chief executive officer.
It's impossible.
It's absolute what you call...
I want us now to talk about 2022 numbers. Of course, as you say, we can go on with this over and over. And just as we look into this, I want to make reference to a particular poll that was done by Chama Chakazi, led by the legislator, Honorable Moses Kuria, who's also affiliated with Deputy President. So I believe we have those figures on your screens, and the poll as it was done, it was dissected into two bits. We have the 2-horse race and the possible 4-horse race. And when you look at that 2-horse race, you having that poll indicate that in the event that elections were to be held today, Raila Odinga would beat Deputy President Ruto hands down. And this is a poll that is done by Chama Chakazi, one of the parties that is affiliated to you. So I just want to begin with you, Honorable Ayacko, in terms of coalitions. We've had UDA maintain very clearly that they're going at it as a party and they're not in the business of forming any coalition. And one thing I know Raila has been praised for over time is the fact that he's been able to sustain a party that has a national outlook. So looking at these figures and these polls and how UDA is going at it as a party, where do you think this confidence from UDA is emanating from?
Well, confidence is a marketing strategy. Yeah. You must be able to persuade your followers or potential followers that you have viability, that you have opportunity and possibility of occupying that office. If you look, dead from the start, nobody wants to be associated with the failure. So I think it is the confidence that they are exuding which is intended to persuade their base that they stand a chance in this race. But even if they run through the race, there have been races where there are many candidates. We have always had many presidential candidates, and many peripheral candidates. Yeah. Ultimately, towards the tape, when people are now on the final lap, the race collapses into a two-horse race. Right now, many people will hype. You will see people thinking that they have what it takes. But wait until February, March next year. Yes. You will see those with stamina, those with strategy, those with electability, you know, just advancing, just running, and others, you know, are trailing, and the gap becomes wider. That's when you will know who is able to run and who is not able to run. In fact, you can even pick it now. You can look at the media attention that is being given to formations. You will find that some formations are not getting media attention because media is watchful. You can see the amount of comments that and following that is being given to certain groups. So I do not want to say which group is that. I hope they do not visit their wrath on me. But going forward, yes, for stability and for the success of this nation, we need a stable administration that does not have a hung parliament. A hung parliament in a highly divided society like this one will create the same kind of challenges that Jubilee is having. You need a stable majority to pass your program, to support whatever you want. So a coalition would bring it on board.
All right, Honorable Ndindi, you're on to give you an opportunity to jump onto this. But if you look at that poll, as I mentioned earlier on, it was dissected or put into two perspectives, that is the two-horse race and the four-horse race. If you look at the four-horse race, this gives Ruto an upper hand with 6.3 million votes, Raila Odinga at 5.7, Kalonzo 1.5, and Mudavadi 1.9. Now, looking at these other two principles, that is Kalonzo Musyoka and Mudavadi, they've stated very clearly, based on their own reasons, that they cannot partner with deputy president. So I'm just trying to look at a situation where UDA goes into next year's election as a single party, and we head off to the runoff, and maybe Kalonzo and Mudavadi work out something and join together. Is this game over for your team?
I think this is the tragedy of cherry picking that we are witnessing with some of the media outlets.
Yeah.
Because you cannot call me here to discuss something that somebody goes behind the computer, comes out with figures. The following day we saw some associate of the same person who purported to have done this poll, presenting the same for payment to the former Prime Minister. It was all over social media, and I'm sure you saw it. Yeah. So for authenticity and for the respect of our viewers, please let me dissect the issue without referencing on garbage. And referencing on the real issue is the political dynamics that we have currently. Because I don't think any other leader here will have time to discuss a poll that does not exist. One, let's go to 2017. 2017, our Jubilee side then had around 8.2 million votes against the former Prime Minister who had around 6.7 million votes. And I've been hearing them all over. I mean, use IEBC. Mheshimiwa, don't ask me questions that
there was one that was nullified.
You can take direct from IEBC. No, you have no time to keep on teaching.
No, there was one that was nullified, so it doesn't exist.
Let me prosecute my matter. Don't interject.
Let's give him time to. I'll give you an opportunity.
As well as our honorable people, you are not used to this heckling and interjecting. Please let me prosecute my point.
Check.
Therefore, according to IEBC, the Jubilee then had around 8.2 million votes. Again, a 6.7. Now, the lie they have been peddling around, ostensibly only to themselves, is that they are trying to climb the mountain, ostensibly to get, I think, 15 or 20%. And they again lie to themselves that after getting that, then that is all they need to make it to the presidency. This is how the big lie will be slayed by Kenyans next year. Part of the 8.2 million votes that we got, majority of that vote is intact. Yeah. And you can pinpoint anywhere. You can pinpoint where you think there is a dent. But let me now juxtapose the same to the other side. Yeah. Out of the 6.2 million votes that the Ochilo's team got in 2017, 1 million votes, precisely 845,000 votes, came from coastal counties, the 6 of them. That was around 83.5% of all the votes cast in the coastal counties. Actually, in Kilifi, they swept all the MCAs and all the MPs. I want you to go and survey those coastal regions now.
Okay.
And you tell me what is left for them as we head to 2022. That's 1 million votes sliced. Let's now go to Lower Eastern. I'm talking about Makueni, Machakos, and Kitui. He actually got 84.5% of all the votes cast. Makueni, that we actually had a by-election the other day, they got 90.6% of all the votes that were valid and cast in Makueni County. That is where UDA, with very minimal campaigns, we actually got 33%. And Wiper was a distant third, and an independent candidate who was actually affiliated with the Hustler Nation trounced all the others.
Yeah.
That's another 1 million votes. It was around 900 and something votes. Let's now go to Western. Actually, we are talking about Kakamega, we are talking about Bugoma, Busia, and lastly Trans Nzoia, and also Mudavadi's county, where he comes from. Cumulatively, the Ochilo's team got 86% in 2017. Currently, those other people, the real pollsters, have not told you is that we are now reading in Bugoma, and that actually in Kakamega we are tying with Mudavadi, not even the person who ostensibly won in 2017.
Yes.
So all these places we have been able to go and sell an agenda. Previously they had been sold some slogans. They don't even know the meaning. Those they keep shouting in public rallies. When we are telling youth how to get jobs, they are shouting some funny slogans. And Kenyans can no longer buy this. We have now gotten inroads into so many other areas. Yeah. And mark this word. Mark this word. Call us here with these gentlemen next year at a time like this.
Minutes,
I want to assure you, we will have defeated them with a bigger margin than 2017. And mark that word.
I've marked it.
Call us here next year. I am so sure Kenyans are no longer interested with those balkanization in terms of ethnicity. Okay. They are no longer interested in those slogans they give in their public rallies. UDA Hustler Nation has been setting an agenda. Gentlemen, and fortunately, the Kenyan people are interested in an agenda.
Fair enough. We have less than 5 minutes. I want to split this time as quickly. Farah, I want to give you an opportunity to mark that. He's said very clearly that mark his words. They're going to come victorious come next year.
I think from the look of things, unless there is a mega alliance, a mega alliance. If Oka and ODM come together, plus of course the Jubilee wing of Uhuru Kenyatta, then you can rest assured that whoever is going to be the presidential candidate for that alliance will have a chance of winning these elections with a comfortable margin. Should any of these two, for whatever reasons, or either collectively or cumulatively Oka, or a section of Oka, join with Ruto, equally Ruto stands a very good chance of winning the elections. Yes. If they all go straight, then you're looking at a runoff. Yeah. And if there's a runoff, nobody's going to get the clear majority that they need. Whether Oka goes as one unit and fills either Kalonzo or Mudavadi as a presidential candidate, and he goes out there and shoots for the votes, and Raila also shoots for the votes with his ODM and whatever he's able to garner from, and Ruto goes his way, I think there will be a runoff. There's going to be a second round. Now, what kind of an alliance can be crafted together in that second round is tricky. You know, politics is the art of the possible. Yeah. And I know myself of a situation in which in Guinea Conakry, when there was an election and somebody had 46%, and a Fulani, basically. Fulani is one of the big tribes in that area. And the presumption was that when they go for a second round, all he needs to do is to pick up another 3% from the others. Okay. But what they did is that all of them combined together, the rest combined together, and even lost a few votes from his side. And the guy who was just overthrown the other day, who was initially, I think, holding 19%, now got over 50%. He crossed the line because of that alliance, mega alliance. All right. So it's tricky. I mean, nobody can be so sure who is going to win these elections if the situation continues the way it is right now.
Okay. Well, Senator Ayacko, this is your time to give me these final thoughts, and just keep it short so that we also give Honorable Ndindi his final.
I thought he got his final.
We'll wipe with this time in under 1 minute. Sure thing.
Okay.
Take it away.
No, yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is, I've heard him rubbish the opinion poll. I actually do not know the methodology that was employed to do it. I also do not know its authenticity. But trying to bandy or trying to throw out there some figures that were nullified by Supreme Court and that were proved to be fake, you know. Yes. You know the Vifaranga figures?
Yeah.
He's talking about them here. Those are no figures. They don't exist anywhere. When we had the alleged runoff, that alleged runoff, the others were not candidates. So it was one person competing against others or against himself, and by the close of by the close of polls, only 3 million Kenyans had turned up. So what he is talking about could be voodoo or his own imagination. Now, when you look at those coastal whatever, it's hard unless you you do a credible examination using science and statistics to talk about those numbers. But clearly, as we look at it soberly, you will find that until Mudavadi, Kalonzo, Raila declared officially their candidatures, they said so. Basically, the deputy president was running alone. And right now, he is bleeding. I doubt whether he'll have anybody on board by March. Okay. He will probably be alone. He is bleeding, and everybody is benefiting. The mountain is going in all directions. He initially had the mountain in one basket. So really, this confidence is the confidence that Saddam Hussein had in 1980. He was a very young man. He didn't know what Saddam said. Yeah. Saddam said that against the entire alliance in the world, that he would water the desert with the blood of infidels. It would be the mother of all battles. Yeah. He lost within 100 days of declaration of that war. That is what is likely to happen to people who think that they own Kenyans. I assure you, they haven't seen nothing yet.
Dear gentlemen, I'm being told
it's not easy at all. Let me just say something. I haven't said much myself.
We are out of time.
Everybody, let me tell you one thing.
No, you cannot.
No, hang on. Ndindi, hang on.
That's why we refuse to.
Ndindi, wait.
Hold on.
Just wait. We don't want this change.
Now listen.
No. We cannot operate like that.
Ndindi, Alan, listen.
And that is
and I give him 30
Alan, listen to me.
No, and then you
I had said, listen, there is nobody who can be written off in this.
Yes.
Nobody who can be written off. And the biggest mistake would be to kind of think of certain alliance and write off the current deputy president. The current deputy president.
Just walk with me on this.
You see what I mean? Nobody can be written off. Not him, not the Oka alliance, not Raila. It's tricky. It's tricky.
First of all, I want to dissuade this very credible gentleman that next time you come on a debate, don't talk about young men, what. This is not a subjective debate. We are called here to discuss issues. So next time, focus on being objective, not subjective. On the figures,
yes,
I just gave the IEBC figures. There is no better opinion poll than that. Where actually Kenyans woke up, went and voted. I've also given you about the inroads that we have made.
Okay.
And this can be verified. Even you can do an opinion poll sponsored by MediaMax. But lastly, in those 30 seconds,
yes,
I cannot allow all the facts that I gave to be infiltrated, especially by Mheshimiwa Ochilo Ayacko.
Yeah.
The figures I gave about debt are given by this government itself. Central Bank of Kenya plus the Treasury itself. And therefore it's verifiable. We have overborrowed. But if you are not contented with the fact that this administration has round down this country in terms of debt, then you can reference the current status of our parastatals. Our parastatals, we are profitable, all of them are bleeding cash. And lastly, you can reference another parameter called the Nairobi Securities Exchange, which is also a parameter to measure how our economy is performing.
Gentlemen, we have to edit at this point and read you hearing that
responsible
music.
for all these things is the deputy president.
We'll do this another time. Thank you very much for joining me. The panel right here, Honorable
Nyoro, you said all the talking and you're blaming
as well as Farah Maalim. Let's get some sports news now.
No, we are talking different things.
K24 Sports News, powered by Mozart Bet.